anymore, but Mitch Rapp had been on the phone to her before she'd finished cleaning out her desk. Coleman had to admit that he'd been a little irritated when a woman who reminded him of his mother showed up at his company's nondescript door to thank him not only for the job, but for the generous mental health benefits. As usual, though, Rapp had been right. Bibi was worth her considerable weight in gold. Coleman glanced at a second screen that displayed a satellite image of Istanbul with a single blue dot representing Bibi's position. It suddenly took a hard left and started down a set of stairs toward the waterfront. "Okay, Joe, she's turned east and we're going to lose her. Can we close in?" "Old lady gets around," Maslik said, grudging respect audible beneath his irritation at having to wade back into city traffic. Coleman smiled as they pulled away from the curb. His men were all former Special Forces, primarily SEALs, Delta, and Recon Marines. With the right set of support hose, though, it was possible that Bibi could run them all into the ground. He wedged a foot against his state-of-the-art electronics to keep them from shifting as the van struggled up a rain-slickened hill. On the main monitor, Bibi's camera swept briefly across the man they were following. He wasn't much to look at. 5'8", a slight Asian tilt to his features, and a mediocre suit pulled close against the rain. In reality, though, Vasily Zhutov was the CIA's highest-placed mole in the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. Codenamed Sitting Bull, he was among the agency's most clandestine and hard-won assets. The problem was that no one was sure if his identity was still a secret. Worse, it wasn't just his cover that had potentially been blown. It was the cover of virtually every CIA asset recruited in the last quarter-century. Teams like Coleman's had been deployed across the globe, spread way too thin to do any more than make educated guesses as to who might be targeted. And it was all because of one man, the late Joseph Rickman. Rickman had been stationed in Jalalabad for the last 8 years and had pretty much run the CIA's side of the war in Afghanistan. Word was that he had an IQ just north of 200, and based on Coleman's interactions with the man, he had no reason to dispute that figure. The better part of $1 billion had flowed through Rickman's hands over the years, funding weapons purchases, bribes to local politicians, and God knew what else. Rick had a relationship with virtually every player in the country, and had an uncanny ability to track the complex forces tearing the region apart. If asked about the economic effect of the heroin trade on the insurgency, he could lecture like a Harvard PhD. Conversely, asked about some minor family dispute between 2 mountain villages no one had ever heard of, he'd speak with equal authority. The only person at the agency who could even hope to keep up with what was going on in that man's head was Irene Kennedy, and she had too many other things on her plate to try. Unfortunately, the house of cards Rickman had built all came crashing down the previous month when he completely lost his mind. Whether it was the pressure of the job, family problems, or just the chaos and hopelessness of Afghanistan, no one knew. What they did know, though, was that Rickman had hatched a plot with Akhtar Durrani, the Deputy General of Pakistan's ISI, to betray the CIA and the people Rickman had fought with for his entire career. Rickman had killed his bodyguards and faked his own kidnapping, going so far as to release a gut-wrenching video of himself being tortured by 2 men posing as Muslim extremists. It had been like setting off a bomb in the U.S. intelligence community. With his incredible intellect and decades of CIA ops under his belt, there was no way for anyone to know what information he was privy to and how much of it he'd give up when the hot pokers came out. Panic ensued, with countless undercover assets requesting extraction, demanding asylum at U.S. embassies, and generally drawing a lot of unwanted attention to America's spy network. During his faked interrogation, Rickman had blurted out a number of names, but one in particular had generated a wave of dread in Langley: Sitting Bull. Russia hadn't been Rick's theater of operation, and the identity of the man was one of the CIA's most closely held secrets. Was it a red herring? Nothing more than a couple of meaningless words he'd overheard and socked away in that magnificent brain of his? Or had he actually gotten hold of enough information to compromise the Russian? Zhutov turned left into an alley, and Bibi hung back. Istanbul's streets were generally packed with people this time of afternoon, but they were moving into a neighborhood made up of dilapidated, unoccupied houses. of delight.